Earth, Wind, and Fire gave us some of the most iconic, and I would argue some of the greatest music in the 70s and the 80s. You know a lot of their songs. After the Love Is Gone, Reasons, Shining Star, Let's Groove, the list goes on. And of course, you can never get through the fall without singing September. The group was amazing. And so when I heard that there was a documentary being done on the group by HBO, I had to check it out. And once I did, I couldn't believe it. I was like, wow. They didn't just give us great music, but man, they gave us powerful lessons that I think we all could learn and apply in our own lives about money, wealth, building equity, and changing your financial future. It was powerful. So on this session, we're going to talk about Earth, Wind, and Fire, not after the love is gone, but after the money is gone. I'm Dion Woods, and this is Wealth Channels. Okay, if you saw the documentary, I'm sure you probably have a lot of opinions on it. The piece that spoke to me, or the aspect of the documentary that spoke to me most, was the financial implications. And so what I wanted to do in this episode is take the greatest lessons that we've learned from Earth, Wind, and Fire and their financial situation and apply it to our own selves and hopefully learn from it and position ourselves to be successful. So the very first thing that I came away with after watching that documentary is that financial success in life is not determined by what you build. It's determined by what you own. That was the primary lesson that I guess, gleaned after watching that Earth, Wind, and Fire documentary. What you build doesn't determine your financial success. What you own does. And when you hear that members of the band were paid $2,500 a week, even though they've sold 90 million copies of their songs, they made hundreds of millions of dollars over their career. The fact that various band members were only earning something like $2,500 a week is just, it's mind blowing. But the challenge was that they were building something, but they didn't own what they built. Only one person owned that, and that was Maurice White. And look, you know, he was the architect, he was a visionary, he took on all of the risk, and so he should have the lion's share of the equity, but they didn't have any equity. And it's mind-boggling, because I think it applies today. You can build something for a company, you can build a department, build a project, build a program, whatever, but it's only what you own that allows you to profit once it's built. And in the case of the band, you know, Maurice was the only one who owned anything. He owned the rights to the music. And so it left the band in a position where the only way they can get paid was the money that they earned as a salary and the money they earned on the road. And that was just pretty sad, because many of them ended up, like, one of them talked about he worked at a construction site. Another one worked at a record store. Philip Bailey had to, his credit cards declined. He had to move out of LA. And I forgot, I don't know if he moved to Colorado or somewhere. I can't remember. But it's just astounding. And when you think about it, it's like they helped to build that band. Like, could you imagine Earth, Wind, and Fire without a horn section? Could you imagine Reasons without the falsetto voice of Philip Bailey? There's no doubt that those members of the band helped to build Earth, Wind, and Fire to what it was. That's not even in question. What's question is, what are you entitled to based on what you build? I asked my brother Chris on this topic what he thought about it, and hear what he said. I found it fascinating.
When you hear these stories about, again, like, my career is okay, but when you talk about groups like Earth, Wind, and Fire, these groups mark history. Like, they mark our lives.
Yeah.
And you see these men out here 70, 80 years old still having to go out to perform to maintain their lifestyle, because they haven't figured out how to make what you get work for you.
And in the case of the group, the person who owned the band felt like they were entitled to a salary and entitled to a little bit of, obviously, what that was picked up on the road. They were making less money than the roadies, the people who were setting up the lights and carrying the equipment, which is just like, it's crazy. But that's just not in the music industry. Now, obviously, it happened to a lot. Like, most people in the industry, certainly at that time, never owned the music that they sang. They never owned the music that they played. They only got paid when they performed it. And the moment they stop performing is the moment they stop getting paid. But the power of ownership is that you continue to get paid well after you stop performing. The same thing I think applies though in our lives. Look, we're not entertainers, we're not sports folks. Maybe you're working at a company, but we're sort of in the same position, right? We're helping to build something at a company, right? We're all working there, and in return for helping that company build something, we get a salary. But the moment we stop working, the moment we stop building is the moment we stop getting paid. And we are in no different of a position than the guys who are getting $2,500 a week in Earth, Wind, and Fire. And that's the lesson that I think, one of the lessons that I really took from that session is like, you can build something, but unless you own it, you aren't going to see much of a profit from it. And the reward for building for you is that you get the privilege of being able to build again. The reward for being an employee is that if you do well, you get to continue to remain an employee. And that was just sort of like eye-opening to me and helped me to understand why there was a challenge, I guess, among the group and Maurice White, the head of the group, because he treated it like literally a sole proprietorship. And he doled out what people would get. He owned the rights to everything. And he was, I guess, a little dictatorial and decided to decide what people could and couldn't do. And most, visionaries and folks are like that. But you would have thought that other people would have shared in the economics of that structure. So here's the thing that I think I also took away from. If you are helping to build something at a company and you don't own a portion of what you're building, charge accordingly. Charge accordingly. If you're living on, if what your reward is a salary and the promise of being able to stay employed, then charge accordingly. On my podcast and on my wealth platform, we're just trying to get this built. And I know I've gone out to a number of people who are at a sort of a higher level in terms of their social standing in social media, and asked them to be guests. And they often say to me, would love to help you, man. It seems like you're building something. I love what you're doing. I love the content, but I need to get paid. And look, I'm not mad at it, right? They're like, hey, I don't mind helping you build this. I believe in it, but I got to charge accordingly, because after it's built and I help you build it, I won't be paid once I leave. So I got to charge you accordingly. And that's the lesson, like charge accordingly. I've said this over and over again. You're paid in life for what you contribute, the value you produce, and what you know. So you have to do that. That's probably why I think, like literally in the documentary, it said that the entire horn section left. And they went and they joined Phil Collins' band because they weren't being paid with Maurice White and Earth, Wind, and Fire. So the entire, all of the horns left. Could you imagine Earth, Wind, and Fire without horns? And so, no, not everybody can leave. You can't leave if you don't have value to present to somebody else. But I will say this, if you aren't respected and valued where you are, then somebody else will see that. And it's about continually generating the greatest value and the greatest work. And others will see that, and you'll be monetized and paid for that work there. And that's what they did. The other thing that I think I got out of this is that if you can't be paid, if what you're building you don't own, then whatever you get, go buy something or go build something that you do. In other words, look, you're on your job, you're contributing to a department, you're a key player, you're helping the business grow, but you don't own it. You aren't even getting any kind of equity in it. And so your reward is maybe a bonus, your reward is your salary. But since you don't own the business, since you aren't owning what's being built, take the money that you do get and go and buy something that you do own. Go and build something that you do own. Go build an investment portfolio. Go build a business. Take that money and go build something that you do own. That's the principle. Because financial success is based on what you own, not what you build. The other thing I really got out of that documentary is that, or at least I was thinking about it, is it must have been tough knowing that people think you're in one place financially and you're in a completely different place. And they're pulling on you as if you aren't. They're asking you for things that you don't even have the capacity to give, but the perception is you have it, and so they're asking you for it. And if you don't give it, the kind of remorse and the kind of maybe guilt that people feel about it is, I found really interesting. in the documentary, it said that Earth, Wind, and Fire would lose something like $500,000 for every time they went on tour during a season in their career. Like $500,000. Royce was spending at one time like $1 million just on clothing. So like you talk about lifestyle inflation, man, that's just at another level. So he didn't have what people thought he had. And clearly the people under him had even less. But what do you do when, you're living in a big house and you're driving a nice car? You've got all these things going on and everybody around you thinks you're doing well, but you know that you're not. And they're pulling on you, asking you for what you don't actually have. That's what I would imagine they face. And I know that's what a lot of people face. Like maybe you're making a good salary, but you got so much debt, you have so many obligations that, in all honesty, you aren't necessarily doing and have a whole lot more than somebody making a lot less than you. And in that environment, that can really play on your mind in terms of people, family, friends, whatever, who are asking you for support because they think you have money. I asked my brother-in-law, Christopher Williams, who has been an entertainer for years, has had tremendous success, has worked with a lot of different artists, and he knows what it's like to be in a place of, financial achievement and success and being also in a period of struggle. And yet all during those periods of time, people pulling on him, asking him for things that they felt like either he owed them or he had the capacity to give. Listen to the advice that he gave to people who might be in that position. I found it fascinating.
You're not God. You have to first make sure you, unfortunately, have yourself right. Because even when you get right, the one thing that I understand about this is that they're going to want to live the way you live. And that's an indication that they don't really love you properly because they've never learned to love themselves properly. You can't satisfy everybody. You just can't. And that's where you got to say, you know what? I'm going to pray for you, or I'm going to meditate for you. I'm going to, whatever it is that I'm going to pray that your circumstances change. I pray that you have an experience that will change your heart. But when you become successful, if you take that on, it's like, miserable people could be in the ocean in the middle. They don't care who they pull in.
Yeah.
You're trying to, extend the olive branch, and you don't realize I keep getting deeper and deeper in this current.
I thought his advice there was really good. They didn't talk about that in the documentary, but I felt like what they said was really good. The other thing that the documentary really had me thinking about is financial success is sort of weird. I sort of view it as like a chair, and it's a chair with 4 legs. One of the legs are your talent or ability. Another leg is your character. A third leg is your financial education and management. And the fourth leg is time. And if you don't have all 4 of those legs attached to the chair that you're sitting on, you won't be sitting long. And obviously, talent is really important. We talked about that. Having ability will allow you to build significant wealth. But character is important because character will always catch up with your talent. I like to put it like this. Your character will ultimately reveal what your talent hides. Just ask R. Kelly, ask P. Diddy, ask Bernie Madoff, ask Epstein. Like, you can have all those things, but your character will ultimately show up and reveal what your talent and your ability is hiding. But the other thing that other leg that I think is important is financial education and management. Like, if you don't know the condition of your financial house, I don't care how talented you are, you're going to be in trouble. Or you're trying to move from one area of your talent and experience and to apply that in another, and you aren't bringing the same level of education. So I'm really big on financial education. Like, it's one thing to say, hey, you're a great athlete. Hey, you're a great entertainer. Now you want to open a restaurant. Now you want to go and start whatever, a company. But you don't have any concept of profit margin. You haven't even looked at the idea of what a balance sheet is. You don't understand capital structure. And what tends to happen is people get fleeced in the industry because they aren't in the right economic structure, and they get fleeced in business because they don't understand economic structure. So educating yourself is always one of the things that I think is so important, or at least bringing people around you that you trust who can help educate you, because even people in your circle who you are entrusting with the responsibility of helping you to understand things, you still are financially dependent on them telling you the truth. So I'm all for telling myself the truth and let me understand the decision that I'm making, and not entrust that to somebody else to make that on my behalf. And then, of course, the final leg is time. And I don't care. You can have education, you can have talent and ability, you can have the wonderful character. But ultimately, when time is up, it's over. And so I think for the group, Earth, Wind, and Fire, those four legs really were problematic. They had great talent and ability. Character, people would argue, was it right for Maurice to take all of the money? I don't know. I think they did a lot of good in the world in terms of like the music that they produced. But that financial education piece, that was what caused that chair to tip. And ultimately, when time was up, they didn't have much to show for it. After the love was gone is an issue, but the money was gone after time was up. And then I guess the last piece that I'll share is that I think the importance of partnership and understanding who you are partnering with in life is a really big determinant to financial success. I don't care if it's a spouse, if it's a business partner, understanding who you are partnering with is critical to your financial success, because you will not know who is really for or against you until you are in a situation that stresses and challenges the relationship. That's when you know what you got. When everything is good and everything is great, there's no problem. But when that relationship and when something comes in that stresses it, that causes and wants to have you be at odds with one another, that's when you know whether or not you got a good partner. When one is willing to sacrifice so that the other can succeed, that's partnership. That means that I got you. I'm not in it for me. If you don't win, I don't win. That's partnership in my mind. So that's my take on the documentary. I enjoyed it. There always is going to be arguments about who was responsible for what and who did what. Everybody's got a different story. If I had to write a line to a song that I would give Earth, Wind, and Fire about, who did what and who was right and who was wrong, it would be, there are two sides to every story and they seldom will agree. But the only one that matters is the one that you believe.